Chief Operating Officer, or the COO, is the corporate executive who oversees ongoing business operations with the company. The COO reports to the CEO and is usually second in command with the company. The role of the COO varies greatly from one industry to another and even from one company to another, which makes it difficult to provide a specific list of duties. The one constant in the COO is a close relationship with the CEO, who is often responsible for defining the role. We are going to talk about the operational part of the COO. The COO is also known as the operations manager. Before we go into the COO's role of an operations manager, we would like to tell you more about the operations management. Operations management is a business function responsible for planning, coordinating, and controlling the resources needed to produce products and services for a company. The operations manager is responsible for input resources like people, materials, and money, and output resources like goods and services. The operational manager is also responsible for maintaining the day-to-day operations of the company and to find the cheaper and efficient ways to produce a product or render services to customers.
Thunder Bay Hydro, being a power supplier, relies on the income from people paying their power bills in order to fund and run their business. Because of this, they often will have decreased amount of income due to people's efforts to conserve energy. And because of this, they have a backwards business model in which they will often be struggling between promoting an ethical business choice of decreasing the power usage of the consumer and between increasing their profits in order to fund larger projects. The organizational structure of Thunder Bay Hydro's operations side is divided into three groups. There's a line crew supervisor, an engineer supervisor, and a control room supervisor, Joe McVetti, whom we have interviewed. Underneath them are specific subgroups. For line crews, there's substation control, lineman/repairman, and supplies coordinator. Underneath engineers, there's the support, infrastructure, and load engineers. Inside the control room, there are just general system attendants who are then observing all of the information coming in and going through operations.
I've been here since 2010, maybe early 2011, as a distribution engineer. So on the other side of the building here, and my role in the distribution engineer was protection and control, generation connections. I kind of get dragged into all the political projects with the generation stuff. Remember the big Thunder Wind Park and even the event center planning and things like that. So it was a mixed bag over there for sure, but the protections and working with operations very closely because everything I change on the engineering side has a big impact on how we operate in here. My new role, system control supervisor, I've been in this role for about 6 months since June, and we have basically I run this department with 8 system controllers, and we manage all of the work protection for our guys in the field. We manage outages. We kind of direct people where to go and how to troubleshoot the network to resolve issues. But also day-to-day planning. Construction is a huge part of our day-to-day effort, so we're constantly rebuilding our network and rejuvenating our network. We're working with the city, or we're working with developers. We're figuring out plans on how do we move forward with their project and have continuity of supply for all of our customers. So that's my role here. So when it's the city directly, quite often what happens is the city, because the city owns Thunder Bay Hydro, they know the executives, so they go directly to people like our president or our vice president, and they'll start talking about potential plans with respect to, for example, the event center, where they were looking at what are we going to do. We had a major piece of infrastructure there, being a substation, and it was right in the way of where they wanted to build that. So there was quite a bit of back and forth there that happened on the executive level, and it would kind of channel down through engineering, through operations here about, okay, how would we reroute those supply lines? What's this going to cost? Is this equipment acceptable? All of those details about the change in our infrastructure that would be pushed on us as part of that. So a lot of planning up front done with the city on that side of things. when it comes to, let's say, a new subdivision development, we have a special division kind of within engineering that handles subdivisions development specifically. So they deal with things like joint use. When it comes to joint use is a term we use for sharing space on the outside plant. So there's like a trench, for example, in a new subdivision. Everything's underground in the new subdivision, so it's kind of subdivided by who goes where in that trench. You've got Union Gas, you've got Shaw, you've got T-Baytel, you've got, Thunder Bay Hydro, for example. So everyone kind of has to organize themselves in that respect, and we have a gentleman that takes care of all those agreements. There's also joint use with respect to on our poles. So we own most of the poles in Thunder Bay, but people like Shaw and T-Baytel want to attach to them. So those are what we call third-party attachments. So there's a lot of planning goes on that way, engineering that goes on to whenever you add something to a pole, you've got to reevaluate all of the stresses on the pole and the guying, and make sure that we can continue to operate the network after they attach what they want to attach. So that's basically done in engineering on that side of things. Before that even gets to that point, in my role as the distribution engineer, that subdivision person would basically come to me and look at, okay, how is this going to affect our network? So can we have a subdivision here? Like, what's the loading going to look like? So he'd give me some approximate numbers, and I'd go through and I have a set of modeling software where I load it all in, and I look at, okay, what kind of voltage drop will we expect on the system? What kind of, do we actually need to upsize conductors? Will the protections work? And things like that. So we do some feasibility assessments on what it takes to add that load to the system, and then once he's got an okay for me that, they'll proceed with the rest of the details of their design. And then they bring me back in at different points to really firm up the details of how that works.
So would you say in engineering you've got people who are more adept to specific scenarios in planning? So you said you had a specific crew for...
There's a specific person that he takes care of planning, but it really does require the whole division for that planning. We've got, there's people that kind of head certain aspects of it, but they'll go around to the different departments. Even within system control here, as my old role in the distribution engineer, I would come to system control and talk to them about like switching strategies and things like that. So when we get a certain number of customers into a subdivision, you've almost got to look at, well, can I feed that subdivision in a couple of different ways? Because the reliability of those customers has to be maintained. So and sometimes it's organic, so you get something like Parkdale that's grown from this small thing, and the number of feeds to that area need to be assessed differently, at different stages of the development. So that's another big part of this, is talking with the developers early on about and finding out what is their long-term plan for
how
these
are they
developments.
Subdividing?
Because they're saying, I'm only building this little piece of the puzzle, but in reality you need to find out what's your big goal. And sometimes it's not even that subdivision developer. You've got to talk to the city, because the city is the one that has the whole picture of how they're going to break up the land in the city. So sometimes you got to dig deeper and find out what what's the future plans, because adding on and adding on and adding on is not efficient. Especially those costs of that subdivision development are basically turned back onto the developer. It's the cost of developing that subdivision, and it's going to be the cost of those homes in that area afterwards. So if there's infrastructure that has to be added, at some critical point, we don't want the burden to be on the Thunder Bay Hydro ratepayers down the line when that's got to be beefed up. We kind of spread it out amongst the developers as they develop that project. So to try to make things fair.
That's good.